Naman is there. You informed Sanjay. Yeah. Is he?
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and get started then. Welcome to the continuation of the discussion on the foundational texts of Indian philosophy. This lecture will be posted on YouTube in case people miss this live session. At the end of the session, there will be a Q&A session. In the meantime, please keep yourself on mute. Once we reach the end of the lecture, please use the raise hand feature if you'd like to ask a question. Thank you very much. And Swamiji can now begin.
Thank you, Naman, for the introduction. Yes. So now we are continuing. Om Sthapakaya cha dharmasya sarvadharma surupine avatara varisthaya Ramakrishnaya te namah. So we are continuing our discussion on the system of philosophy called Dvaita philosophy. It's called Dvaita Siddhanta or Madhvacharya. It is one of the non-Advaitic schools of Vedanta. The first and perhaps the most well-known school is the Advaita of Shankaracharya, and then Visishtadvaita of Ramanuja, and the third well-known school is Madhvacharya. So now, of course, there is one fundamental difference between Advaita on the one hand and Visishtadvaita and Dvaita on other. One major difference is Advaita has become popular all over the world as a universal outlook towards the absolute reality and also towards life as a whole. The other systems, without any prejudice, we can say, they have one small little problem. They are frequently confined to a particular group, community, or maybe sometimes in some cases people may mistake it as a cult. For example, the Ramanuja, Madhva, all these systems, though they have a very strong philosophical aspect about them, still frequently they are followed by a definite group of people who follow certain external marks. You can frequently see these marks on their foreheads. They follow certain traditions, certain rigid restrictions. So in that respect, they are perhaps not so widely known outside India or even outside South India as Advaita. Advaita is known all over the world, especially its popularity in the West is due to the great work done by Swami Vivekananda in 19th century, who brought Advaita Vedanta and gave it a very modern interpretation in English language, addressing audiences in the US and many European countries. And even within India, when he preached Advaita Vedanta, he used the English language. So it has become, it has received a worldwide attention, and he was followed in later years by many other preachers, even during the later half of 20th century, in the later half of 20th century, by men like Swami Chinmayananda, in the earlier half of 20th century by Paramahamsa Yogananda, this Rishikesh Shivananda and others. So you find Advaita has received worldwide attention that goes beyond the people who followed Indian culture or Hindu tradition. That's one unique aspect of Advaita. Now coming back to the subject. One interesting concept of Madhvacharya was that is the Sakshi. It's the concept of testimony. he says the final judge of all verifications is Sakshi. I shall try to explain. Now, Sakshi means witness in Vedantic tradition. Sakshi actually is defined by Appaya Dikshita, who actually criticized Madhva philosophy or Madhvacharya's philosophy. And he says, for example, bodhrutvat audasinitva sakshitvam. When you are aware of something and when you are not involved, then you get a higher perception as a witness, as a subject, as a seer, as a perceiver, apart from the perceived or the seen objects. So that's the Advaita concept. But Madhvacharya has got a different interpretation of this. So, in fact, there is one well-known book by Madhvacharya, it's called Anuvyakhyanam. It's actually a work on Brahma Sutras, is in metrical form. So, in this book, he tries to emphasize his concept of pluralism as opposed to the unity and oneness taught by Advaitins. Advaita teaches there is only one reality. It is one supreme reality that is eternal, that is immortal, that is everlasting, that is Brahman, Atman. That is Advaita's doctrine, main doctrine. In total contrast to this, Madhvacharya says, this is wrong. The reality is not non-dual, it is plural. So I mentioned this earlier, the Madhvacharya system of Panchabheda Siddhanta, his doctrine of 5 differences. If you draw a triangle, you find God on the top and on both sides, Jivas and Jagat, God and the world and different living beings. And according to Madhvacharya, there's a difference between different living beings. There's a difference between living beings and God. And there's a difference between this world and God. And there is a difference between different objects within the world. And there is a difference between different living beings, jivas, and the empirical world, I mean jivas and Jagat. So this is a very important doctrine, the 5-fold differences. And he says these differences are eternal. So in that respect, dualistic philosophy is the polar opposite of non-dualistic philosophy. And he drives home this idea of pluralism. That's very interesting. Actually, if you read Madhvacharya's system, at first we may assume that he is correct. For example, we know very well that nothing in this world is similar or identical to each other. Everything is different from everything else. Our 5 fingers are not the same, not identical in our hands. No 2 trees are identical. No 2 human beings are identical, totally. No 2 animals are identical. So everything is different from everything else. So one may be tempted to believe that Madhvacharya is correct in his emphasis on pluralism. So I am going to read something from this Anuvyakhyanam. It's a well-known book by Madhvacharya. He wrote 37 important works. He wrote a commentary on Rigveda, and he wrote his commentaries on Bhagavad Gita. He wrote commentaries on the Upanishads, and also he wrote something on Mahabharata. So, and he wrote a book on even Bhagavata Purana, Bhagavata Tattva Talparya Nirnaya, some Bhagavata Tattva Nirnaya, Bhagavata Talparya Nirnaya. So, he wrote innumerable books, altogether 37 books. And also there are more than one book on Brahma Sutra itself. So Anuvyakyanam is one of his well-known books. And there, to quote his own words from Anuvyakyana, Na dukkhanubhava kvapi mityanubhavodam vrachet kobi hyartho naschedum sakyade brahmavadina. Brahmavadi means Advaita. So, kobi hyartho na nischedum sakyade brahmavadina. He says, there is the painful experience, the experience of pain, and also there is this opposite. And according to Advaitins, who tell you that everything in the empirical realm is mithya, so, but then you cannot really take it for granted, you cannot accept it. He continues, Brahmatvam abhramatvam cha sarvam vedyam ki sakshina Shuddha Sakshi Yada Siddhu Dukkhitam Varide Katham. Says, we can never experience the pain and suffering in the world as something that do not really exist. It is not false experience. We cannot dismiss as false our experiences of pain and suffering that we normally undergo. So he uses the word Brahmavadi, means the illusionist. Actually, it is not a very justifiable, not a dignified term that could be used against Advaita, because Advaita is not a Brahmavada, it's not Mayavada, Advaita is Brahmavada. The main thesis of Advaitins is that Brahma Satyam, that is the central doctrine of Advaita. Jagat Mithya is not the central doctrine. So very often you find in the non-Advaitic schools this tendency to put it upside down. So they don't use the word Brahmavadi, they use the word Brahmavadin as Madhvacharya uses, or what I call Mayavadi. And sometimes Dvaitins were not above this temptation to use some very strong language, not always very dignified in their references to Advaitins. So that's a different subject which I don't want to refer to. So you can see the problem of dialectical discussion here. So you criticize a system of philosophy, and before doing that, you misinterpret it, you misrepresent it by taking its irrelevant, or rather its relatively secondary doctrine as the primary doctrine. So this is an important thing. The word Mithya, Maya were brought into Advaita by Shankaracharya to answer the question as to why this world appears to be real, and why and how we wrongly assume that Brahman has become this world. So once you understand the true nature of this world, then you realize this world is there, but it is changing all the time. It is subject to changes. We don't experience this world as the same world in the past, present and future. In fact, the earth itself has undergone changes. It is undergoing changes now due to global warming. You can see the ocean level is rising, the temperature is rising in many places, global warming, and all these things are happening. So we can see this empirical world, cosmos itself, is subject to changes. So Vedanta Advaitins say this world is not non-existent, but because it is changing, it is not real in the absolute sense. In the absolute sense means it is not remaining the same in the past, present and future without any change. It is changing all the time. So to denote this changeability of the impermanent empirical world, the word Maya and Mithya was brought in by Shankaracharya. So, the word Mithya or Maya is only a term used to explain the strange mystery of our misunderstanding this world as the permanent reality. It's almost like, I can give a much more simple example. Suppose you have, I used this example earlier, you have about, say, 5 pot cups, 5 cups of the clay, made from clay, or maybe 5 golden ornaments in front of you. Now, one may say that it's all gold only. See, one golden ornament is in the form of a necklace, another may be a ring, another may be something else. Or the same mud, same soil, the same mud may be used to make a jar, a glass, or maybe a bigger vessel, whatever may be. So, Advaitis may say actually it's all made of same mud. So that's a reality. But when Dvaitins say no, a mud jar is different from a cup made of mud. It's true actually. You don't drink water with a big jar. You need a cup for drinking water. And if you have got different golden ornaments, you use them differently, you wear them differently. So there is a difference with regard to the practical application or utility. But that difference doesn't make a permanent difference. That difference is only relative. Because if you break all these earthen pots and pans and jars, they become earth, they become mud. If you melt all the different golden ornaments, they become gold. And again you can make them, you can make golden ornaments again. So it is true to say, it is perfectly okay to say it is gold only. But it is also okay to say, but it is the golden ornament is different from, the necklace is different from golden ring. That's true. But Madhvacharya says, no, this difference in terms of utility value makes a complete difference. That's what he says. That's why the 5 differences, Panja Bheda Siddhanta. It is, I mentioned I quoted earlier, in Madhva's own words. And also Jayatirtha. Vyasatirtha also he says, in his critique of the famous dialectical work Nyayamrita. So they say the utility value makes it totally different from each other. Shankaracharya says utility value doesn't make it different. Essentially it is earth only, it is gold only. Similarly, Sukha Dukkha. Na dukkhanubhava kwapi mithyanubhavodam vrajet kopi hyartho na nischedum shakyade brahmavadina. So I say the illusionist philosopher cannot establish anything for certain by saying that the so-called empirical experience of dukkha is mithya. The problem is, the word mithya is not understood in the correct implication by non-Advaitins. The word mithya is being interpreted in 5 different ways in 5 well-known books, actually 4 books. I have 5 different interpretations. During the post-Shankarite time, of course I mentioned this earlier, but I can repeat again. Mithya doesn't mean complete non-existence. Mithya only means something that doesn't remain in the past, present and future without any change. The most well-known definition of Mithyatvam according to Panchapadika, Padmapada was Shankaracharya's own disciple, Panchapadika. He says, Pratipanna upadu traikalika nishedha pratiyogitvam va mithyatvam. Pratipannopadi means something that you come to know. For example, you are seeing something in front of you. Well, in that Traikalika Nisheda Prayogitam, you can deny the possibility of that object remaining the same without any change in the past, present and future. So, you can deny the possibility of that object remaining without any change in the past, present and future. That's the implication. The cosmos itself undergoes change. So it is mithya. So now, this word, this mithyatvam is frequently interpreted by non-Advaitin philosophers, Ramanuja, Madhva and others, as non-existent. So Shankaracharya will not say that life is without any pain and pleasure. In fact, some of his stotras themselves contain fervor, very ardent prayers to Divine Mother with great devotional fervor for liberation. In fact, many of these devotional poems are highly mystical and very emotional. Devotees praying to God for deliverance from poverty, from ill health, from old age related problems, all that you find in Shankara Stotra, Shankaracharya's devotional hymns. So he doesn't deny the reality, the problem of unpleasant experiences in life. But what he says is, these experiences are relative because they don't remain the same. Yesterday you were happy, today you are unhappy, tomorrow again you will be happy. So that's why, now again, there are very, very strong statements in the works of Madhva. For example, again he repeats the same statement, Kalpana Gaurava Deva Padarthana Sihu Hi, means, again this statement continues. He says, things will not change or cease to exist just because we imagine. So, we are going through some experiences. We cannot say we are not going through those experiences. We cannot imagine. Just by imagining that something doesn't exist in this world, they cannot cease to exist. So, the idea of mithyatvam is being totally misinterpreted. I'm just giving an example. Again, the world in the Brahmatvam, Abhramatvam cha sarvam vedyam ki sakshina. Sakshina sarvam vedyam means sakshi, the witness, understands everything. Witness is, here the implication is the one who actually experiences, the person who experiences something, the sakshin. That is the concept of real testimony. You have seen, you have experienced. That's the ultimate judge. So, we are experiencing this world, everything in this world we are experiencing, so we cannot say the world doesn't exist. But Shankara, the Advaitins do not say the world does not exist. Advaitins only tell you that the world doesn't exist without any change in the past, present and future. So these are important points to remember. So according to him, this criterion of Sakshi Pratyakshatva means logical limit of all certainty, the ultimate logical limit of all certainty, all testimony is Sakshi. That's what he says. If you use any other testimony, Madhva system accepts Pratyaksha, Anumana and Shabda, verbal testimony. They may still leave some doubts behind, but one's own real experience, Sakshitvam, doesn't leave any doubt. That's why, na pramanya shanga sakshinaka kindu manasa evacha. Jayatirtha wrote a well-known Tiga on Vishnu Tattva Nirnayaka. That is again a work of Madhvacharya himself. Jayatirtha is the commentator of many of Madhvacharya's important works. So now, pramanya shanka. You will have no doubt at all. When you are a sakshi of an experience, you are an experiencer, the witness. Then you will have absolutely no doubt. So that is a well-known statement frequently quoted by Madhva philosophers. Jayatirtha is one of the commentators. This way before he says, Dividham hi prameyam sodantram asodantram cha. Pratiksha anumana sabda pramana. This Swatantra, the independent entity, is only Vishnu. So, everything in this world is real, but not independent. It is a reality, ontological reality, but it has no independence. Everything in this world is dependent on Vishnu. So, that's an important point. And again he says, the ultimate criterion for judging whether something is real or not is the sakshi, pramanyam. Na pariksha anavastha syad sakshi siddhi tu asamshayad. He continues in Anuvyakhyana. It's a well-known books, very important books, remember. It's a golden era of dialectical discussion. Dialectical works were written, innumerable dialectical works were written during even post-Madhva period, when they had to confront criticism or defense of Advaita from the Advaitic philosophers. And then they wrote back. For example, Appayadikshida, one of the later Advaitins, wrote books questioning Anuvyakhyana, the views expressed in Anuvyakhyana, and again they were confronted by the later Dvaitins also. So he says, na pariksha anavastha syad sakshi siddhetu asamsayat. If you have got pratyaksha, anumana and shabda, your direct perception can leave some doubt, this possibility. You may perceive something, still may have some doubt, and you may have inference, you may have shabda. But something that you go through, for example, pain and pleasure, all these experiences which go very deeper into a system, it's beyond what is perceived at the pratyaksha level, that you can never and you will never deny, because they are always there. Yadina angikrutam kinjit anangikrudapi anangikrutada api, that's the meaning. Nangi Kridedi mukasyat idi nasmat vivadina. So, this idea continues. Again, in this context, again he defends this idea of pluralism. So, most of Madhvacharya's writings are directed towards criticizing the concept of reality as being one and not many, as upheld by Advaitins, and also towards the concept of Maya or Mithyatvam, which Advaitins use to emphasize the idea of unity and oneness. So this again, there is an important statement. Jayatirtha himself wrote this well-known book in Jayatirtha's famous book. So, in Tattwamayanandaji, it's a very well-known book. Eketu ekemeva tattwamiti manyante. So, he actually is a long paragraph is there in this well-known book. That is Tattwamayanandaji. Dvaita was one prominent commentator. So, for example, some philosophers referring to Advaitins hold a view that is only one reality in the universe. Very interesting to listen to some of the arguments put forward. I mentioned earlier, two important points to remember. Advaita is not Mayavada, it is not Mithyavada. It is Brahmavada. The central doctrine of Advaita is that Brahman is only reality. Then what about these manifold objects that we see around us? How can we say everything the same? How do you explain the empirical experience of plurality and manifoldness. To explain that, this concept of Maya or Mithya is brought in by Advaitins. These things are Mithya in the sense they are there, but they are not there all the time. When they are not Paramarthika Satta, they belong to Vyavaharika Satta. So, in referring to this argument, this idea of unity and oneness in Advaita, Jaitirtha is writing here in well-known book, this Tattvasankhya Tika. So, eke tu ekameva tattvam iti manyante. Some thinkers, some philosophers implying Advaitins, they hold this view that there is only one reality in the universe. Tad asat. That cannot be correct. That is a Jayatirtha's attack on Advaita, dialectical attack, and his defense of Dvaita. Pratyakshadi virodhat. It goes against the empirical evidence of direct perception, because the moment we open our eyes and use our mind with the five senses of perception, every day, every minute, we are witnessing the reality of manifoldness and plurality and differences in this world. So, therefore, the Advaitins' view of unity and oneness cannot be accepted. This is Jayatirtha's statement. Pratyakshadi virodhat sarvasya swadantritve nitya sukhadi prasangaka. So, there are different ways of anticipating possible arguments from Advaitins. Jayatirtha says they may apply different methods to establish this unity and oneness. One is sarvasya swadantritve. Suppose you say everything in this world is independent. In that sense, there is unity and oneness. Then what happens? Everyone in this world will be like God. Always there will be enjoyment, there will be self-mastery, there will be no different, no problem, everything happens as you want, because every living being in this world is swatantra, independent. So, it is illogical, it is unacceptable. Nitya sukhadi prasanga. Aswadandre cha na kasyavi pravrittihi. Then there is another way of establishing unity and oneness. Everyone in this world, everything in this world is dependent. That means not independent but dependent. In that case, nacha kasyavi pravrittihi. Then no one will do anything. Because there will be, if all are independent, then what happens, then if everyone is independent, then everyone will be happy, everyone will be like God himself. That cannot happen. If everyone is dependent, if nobody is independent, everyone is dependent, then what happens? Nobody will have any inclination to do anything. Without a sense of freedom, you will not have any incentive to do anything. Then another possible argument is a very interesting argument. We have to remember that we are reading from books written at least maybe 800 years ago, 700 years ago. So it's a very interesting. Then he says, Andhabungavat syadidi chedna. So, suppose you say, well, there are people who are independent and there are people who are dependent. Two types of entities in this world. So, they go together, they coexist like a lame man and a blind man. The blind man cannot see, but he can walk. The lame man can see, but cannot walk. Blind man, certainly he is able to see, but so the blind man is able to walk, but he is not able to see. The man who has no eyes is a blind man, cannot see, but he is able to walk. The lame man he is able to see, but he cannot walk. So they two together combined, this life can go on in this world. These are possible anticipating arguments from the opponent. They say, I'm just giving an example of this ancient dialectical method used by great philosophers in ancient India. It may be slightly unpleasant or boring, but you can see my own logic. So they write books and they often anticipate possible objections from the opposing school, and then they put their argument onto their mouth and then they give a reply. Like that goes on. And after some years, from the opposing school, another great book will be written from the Advaitin side. This went on for many, many centuries. So, Andhabungavat syat iti na. Means it cannot be that there are people in this world who are swatantra and there are people in this world aswatantra. Those who are independent and those who are dependent. And they coexist together, each helping the other. That cannot be true. Chetna. Pratyasattereva anubhavatehe yadi sarvameva sutantram syad tada paratantriyadi pradeti virodhaka. Suppose you say, well, everything in this world is independent, everything is self-sufficient, then we are actually pretending as if there is no problem in this world. There is always a problem because some people are not able to do what they want to do. Everyone wants to be rich, but very few are able to be rich. Everyone wants to have contentment, but not everyone can have contentment, inner satisfaction. So people don't get all their desires fulfilled. So if they were independent, if they are omnipotent, they would have been able to do whatever they want. They would achieve whatever they wanted to achieve. But that's not true in this world. Therefore, there is a problem somewhere. And if we say that everyone is swatantra, everyone is independent, then we are negating an obvious reality. That is, there are people who are not able to achieve what they want to achieve. That's because of their lack of swatantriyam or independence. I mean, they are dependent upon somebody. There is something lacking in them. There is something incomplete. That is true. Every human being really feels some kind of dependence, in the sense paratantriyam in Jayatirtha's language, which means some kind of incompleteness, imperfection. Always wanting to have more of what they have, or they want to have something which they don't already have. If they have something, they want more of that. If they don't have it, they want it still. So there is always a problem in human life. A problem of incompleteness, a problem of non-fulfillment of what they really want to achieve. We cannot wish away that fact. That's what Jayatirtha says. So, yadi sarvameva swantram syat tada paratantriyadi praditi vidodhaka. Paratantriya praditi is there. We all see that. We experience that. We have the understanding that there is always a problem in human life. We cannot just pretend as if it doesn't exist. Nitya sukhadi prasangascha. If everyone is swatantra, then everyone will be happy. But that doesn't happen. There is paratantriyam, there is dependence, there is incompleteness, there is something that everyone is seeking to achieve, to get. Yadi va paratantrameva tattvam bhaved anavasthidehi asambhavacha na kasyapi sattadigam syad. Suppose somebody says that everyone is dependent without everyone is paratantra, everyone is suffering from paratantrium, incompleteness, without anyone being independent, then there is what they call, this we could add infinitum. I mean, A will depend upon B, B depend upon C, C depending on. So in fact, everyone will be depending upon everyone else. That will be some kind of a anarchism or an extreme kind of atheism, negating anything in this world. It will be kind of spiritual anarchy. That's what Jaitirtha says. So it cannot be accepted. The point is, Jaitirtha says, there is this plurality, manifoldness in this world. Everything is different from everything else. And you cannot say that the truth is one, the reality is one, and the plurality or the experience of plurality or manifoldness is mithya or maya. The idea cannot be accepted. That's the driving argument of Jaitirtha. This is an important point, remember. So this idea is again put forward by Madhvacharya, and also he also, as I mentioned earlier, he also wrote some books on the Puranic literature. For example, Bhagavata Tattvarya is a very, very important book. Bhagavata Tattvarya Nirnaya. It is a very well-known book by Madhvacharya. And according to him, Vishnu is the Paramarthika Satta. In Advaita, Brahman is the Paramarthika Satta, but in Madhva system, Vishnu is the Paramarthika Satta. And Vishnu alone is independent. Everything else in this world is dependent. Even Shiva, Vishnu, other deities are also depending upon Vishnu. And he quotes from Bhagavata Purana also, which I am going to refer to earlier. And we are going to refer to it again. So very interesting. Everything else is dependent upon Vishnu. So you'll be surprised when I tell you that Madhvacharya's insistence on the finality of Vishnu as the one supreme monotheistic Godhead, it has even led some critics to imagine that there was a considerable amount of Christian influence on Madhva system, because Madhvacharya lived in the west coast. Maybe his activities spread over from Kundapura and in the north of Udupi and right up to the northern districts of Kerala. So that was the area of his operations. And there were Christian missionaries, not too many, just a few. Portuguese had already established some small little factories in the west coast. There was some little influence of Portuguese traders who have established factories in the west coast. So some enterprising, adventurous, overzealous writers have even argued that in Madhva system you can see traces of the influence of Christian theology. For example, the finality of Christ. And again, it says the concept of hell and people going to hell. All these ideas show the influence of Christian theology, but it's not at all true, because there were only just a few soldiers and few sailors, adventurers, not clergymen at that time in the west coast. Madhvacharya had absolutely no contact with any Christian missionaries, the Portuguese or anyone else. Absolutely no. But I'm mentioning this to show that Madhvacharya's insistence or emphasis on the finality of Vishnu and his emphasis on subordinating all other deities of Hindu pantheon was so emphatic that it led many people to suspect that he was influenced by Christian missionaries, which is not at all true. There is absolutely no trace of any possible justification for this view. Just I wanted to mention in the point. So in the Bhagavata Tattvarya, for example, he says, he distinguishes the highest reality from mere existence. And again, he also continues, he takes some words from the Bhagavata Purana. Paramarthika satyatvam swadandriyam abhidhiyate. Tad Vishnoreva na anyasya tad anyesham sadastita. It's actually from Bhagavata Tattwamayanandaji. That's a well-known book by Madhvacharya on Bhagavata Purana. And later he can find him quoting from Bhagavata itself. So, Paramarthika Satyatvam, Swadandriyam Vidhiyate. So, what is Swadandriyam? Swadandriyam or independence is the fact that Brahman, perceived as Vishnu, is the ultimate reality, is ultimate truth. And all others are dependent upon Vishnu for their existence. In other words, their existence is dependent upon Vishnu, who is the ultimate Paramarthika Satta or absolute reality. In fact, he quotes from Brahma Sutra, in his Brahma Sutra Bhashya, he quotes some verses from Bhagavata Purana itself. So he's trying to reconcile, he's trying to effect a reconciliation of the polytheism of the Vedic literature, pre-Vedantic Vedic literature. That means Rigveda Samhita is the earliest well-known document of Vedic tradition. Rigveda has got, of course, Samhita, Brahmana, and many Upanishads, Aranyaka Upanishads, so on, like any other three Vedas. So these Vedas, Vedic literature, they talk about different deities. Indra, Mitra, Varuna, Agni, Soma, and Aditya, and innumerable deities are mentioned in Vedic literature. Sometimes you find there are traces of pantheism and pantheism and also polytheism and monotheism in Rigveda Samhita. I mean the way of looking at God as the same as this empirical nature. I mean, the world, the empirical world, nature itself is God, pantheism. And God is present in everything in nature, pantheism. And different forces of this nature are being controlled and regulated by a manifold number of different devas and devatas, deities. That is polytheism. And there is one supreme creator God, monotheism, very similar to the Abrahamic traditions. So, Madhva had in front of him this difficult task of effecting a reconciliation between the polytheism of Vedic, Pantheon Vedic tradition and also the Puranic tradition with his own emphasis on Vishnu as the only supreme Godhead. So how to establish Vishnu as one supreme Godhead? And how do you reconcile the polytheism of Veda with this concept of monotheism? And for that, he actually quotes from Bhagavata Purana in his Brahma Sutra Bhashya. The one well-known verse that he quotes is from the Dasama Skandha of Bhagavata Purana, Uttaradha. I mean the 10th Skandha, the 10th book. The Bhagavata Purana is divided into 12 sections called skandhas, of which the biggest and the largest book is the 10th one, that is Dasama Skandha, which contains the incarnation, the rebirth of Sri Krishna and so on. It has got two halves, one is Purvardha, the earlier half, and the later half, the previous and the later one. So Purvardha and Uttarardha. So in the 71st chapter of the Uttarardha, the later part of tenth man. Tenth Vishnu is Arupi, means it doesn't have a definite form. Kalasya Ishasya Tava. And he's the Kalasya Isha means he's the controller, regulator of time, past, present, and future. And he is the one who is responsible for creation, sustenance, that is preservation, and dissolution of this universe. So, in reality, we assume that Brahma is the one responsible for creation, and Vishnu is responsible for preservation or sustenance, and Shiva is responsible for dissolution. But in reality, it is you alone. You are the one who is responsible for everything. All other deities are able to function because of you. So that's why Vishwa Sarga Nirodhayoho. The world is being created, it undergoes through dissolution, and also is emergence nimittam. And it's all you alone. You are the Param Nimittam, you are the only one supreme cause. So he quotes some of these verses from different Puranic literature to emphasize his idea that Vishnu is the one supreme deity. All other polytheistic deities are subservient or they are under the control of Vishnu. They are different manifestations of Vishnu. So, Tatra Tatra Sthido Vishnu, Tattat Shakti Prabodhayin, Eka Eva Mahashakti, Kride Sarvamanjasa. He quotes all this. Tatra Tatra Sthido Vishnu, Tattat Shakti Prabodhayin. So, in all different positions where different deities are performing different duties, Brahma is supposed to be responsible for creation, Vishnu is responsible for sustenance and preservation, and Shiva is responsible for dissolution. In reality, is Vishnu alone. His power functions in different ways, different manifold ways, as Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. Like that, he talks all this. He quotes all these verses. He also quotes from Bhagavad Gita, Matta Smriti Jnanam Apohanam Cha. Everything happens matta, from me. Smriti Jnanam Apohanam means memory, knowledge, and also the gift to forget all come from me. It's quoted from the Gita, 10th chapter. Again, Tapini, Pachini Chaiva, Shoshini Cha Prakashini, Naivarajan Rive Shakti, Shakti Narayanasya Cha. So, the sun's light, it functions in different ways. It helps you to cook. It helps you to heat your room, because when sunlight is there, your room is warm. And also, it has, sometimes if there is too much of heat, it also creates health problems. So, Tapini, Pachini, Shoshini, Prakashini gives you light, it illumines things. All these are different functions of sunlight. But really, Shakti Narayanasya, the power comes from Vishnu. So you find in Madhvacharya's system this emphasis on the idea that Vishnu is the supreme, and the finality and uniqueness of Vishnu as a deity. This is an important principle. But remember, Madhvacharya was a great saint. He also wrote some devotional hymns. He was a great devotee of God. But this system of philosophy you find as a tendency to move in one direction, and sometimes a tendency to become exclusive. So you are most welcome to ask questions. It's a friendly discussion. Thank you.
Mahabhutas do not have a fundamental existence. They are not present in all three times, present, past, present, and future. Is that correct, Swami?
Could you repeat once more the question?
In Advaita, the Pancha Mahabhutas, what is their role?
In
They
Advaita,
operate.
yeah. See, Pancha Mahabhutas are the evolutes of Prakriti in Advaita and also Sankhya system. Pancha Mahabhutas, the evolutes of Prakriti. And they constitute the empirical world, which includes our own body. So, Pancha Mahabhutas are the evolutes of Ahankara. So, from Pancha Mahabhuta, Tanmatras, from Tanmatras, Pancha Mahabhuta comes. So, they are evolutes of Prakriti. From Prakriti, Mahatutvam, and then that is Buddhi and Ahankara.
Do they resolve to Brahman ultimately?
Excuse me, do they evolve? Pancha
Do they
Mahabhutas.
resolve to Brahman ultimately? Or they
This
also are ultimately Brahman, Pancha Mahabhutas?
Yeah, I tell you, Panchamahabhutas, when you realize, when you become spiritually enlightened, you don't cease to be Panchamahabhutas because your physical body is still part of Panchamahabhuta. But you realize that you are not just physical body, which is made of Panchamahabhutas. So your own inner mystical experience. That's what really happens. Panchamahabhutas are subjected to origination, growth, different stages of evolution, and then dissolution. They are part of the empirical world. Just a tree also, like your body also. Technically, there is no difference between a tree, a mud, a stone, and your body. They also come into existence. The body also comes into existence. But in your body, there is a divine spark. That's what makes a difference. And the more you are aware of it, the more enlightened you become. So enlightenment literally means you get the strong inner, not just conviction, but experience that you are not this physical body, you are the transcendental reality. That's all. So physical body doesn't cease to exist. Your identification, your fascination for your body. In real life, what a spiritually enlightened man, how he look at his own body. It's an instrument he needs. Suppose you are holding a stick in your hand. Okay. Somebody hits the stick, you are not hurt. If somebody is hitting your hand, which is holding the stick, you are hurt. Now, an enlightened person, when something happens to his body, he doesn't feel that there is anything happening to him because he is distinct and different from his body. Just as a man holding a stick experiences and he actually understands and realizes that the stick is not part of his body. He doesn't identify himself with the stick he is holding in his hands. It's a kind of inner experience. So Panchamahabhutas are part of this empirical world. Your body is also part of Panchamahabhutas. They come and go. They come into existence, they go through different stages of the evolution, and they disappear, they also re-emerge. When you are born again in your next life, again your soul, your Atman, is again operating through this cage. It's like a bulb in which the electricity is manifesting, you get light, that's all. Depending upon the gadget, the machine, the instrument, the manifestation differs, that's all. Yeah.
You're muted.
Yes, we cannot hear you.
Swamiji, namaste, this is Gopinath.
Yeah.
You talked about how Madhvacharya used the idea of Mithya to refute Dvaita. Did the
other Dvaitas also focus on Nitya, or did they use other arguments to refute Advaita?
Yeah, in fact, the great dialectical writers belonging to Madhva school, among them Jayatirtha was very prominent, and then Vyasatirtha, who wrote Nyayamata, the two well-known. There were others also, Bhaditirtha and so on. But Jayatirtha and Vyasatirtha, both of them followed the same track of misrepresenting the Advaitins' view of Jagat Mithyatvam. There is a historical background explanation for this. That should be understood. In fact, that's one problem that's not well understood. The point is, I mentioned this earlier, between 9th century AD and 16th century AD, almost 600, 700 years. This is a period of dialectical confrontations between Advaita on the one hand, Vishishtadvaita and Dvaita on the other hand. Vishishtadvaita also produced one outstanding writer during the post-Ramanuja period. His name is Vedanta Desika Venkatanatha. He also wrote well-known books. There was also when Sudarsana Suri, Sruti Prakashika, he wrote a commentary on Ramanuja Sribhashya. But the major exponent of Ramanuja's system was Vedanta Desika. So he also uses strong language, but not the same shocking language used by some of the Madhva writers. Not all, but some. So they call, for example, the Advaitins were called Prachanna Bauddhas. Prachanna means incognito. Bauddha means, mostly they were talking that, they were implying that Advaitins are really like Mahavainasikas, the Shunyavadins, a school of later Vijnanavadins, who denied everything. Nothing exists in this world. Advaitins never say that nothing existed. We can just imagine, it is very, very sorry that none of these post-Shankarite critics of Advaita ever had the wisdom to go and read one of Shankaracharya's absolutely astounding devotional poetical classics. You should know that none of the Dvaitins or Vishishtadvaitins could ever write anything comparable to the spiritually elevating devotion poetical classics of Shankaracharya. Saundara Lahari, Ananda Lahari, Devi Aparadha Kshamaavana Stotra, Shiva Aparadha Kshamaavana Stotra, Bhavani Ashtaga, and so on. You can imagine. So, something very interesting thing is that Shankaracharya's insistence on Karma Yoga, on devotional fervor, on bhakti, were completely forgotten and it took a back seat. And there is also another reason for it. In fact, to uphold Advaita, some of post-Shankarite Advaitins wrote books which emphasized the mithyatva doctrine of Advaita instead of emphasizing the Brahman. The emphasis of Brahman is only reality. That aspect of Advaita was not emphasized. Instead, the mithyatvam, Jagat mithyatvam aspect of Advaita was emphasized. So that created a backlash from Dvaitin schools. Actually, Dvaita school produced many more outstanding scholars and dialecticians than Vishishtadvaita schools. Vishishtadvaita school did not really produce so many outstanding dialecticians like the Madhva school, comparable to Jayatirtha, Vyasatirtha. After Advaitins, it was Dvaita school that produced many outstanding scholars and dialecticians. So what really happened was, for example, Vajaspadi's Bhamadi Tika, it's actually commentary on Shankara Bhashya. Sureshwaracharya's Brihadaranyupanishad Bhashya Vartikam, and his own Aishkarmi Siddhi, or Padmapada's Panchapadika, and Panchapadya Vyarana Prakashatmedi. So what happens, in all these books, there was more emphasis on one aspect of Advaita, that is Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithya. But frequently Jagat Mithya, that second part was given more emphasis in some places. Khandana Khandagadi is an example by Sriharsha. So you have to remember the intellectual landscape of India at that time. Some great scholars in some places of learning, centers of learning, will write some outstanding classics, and that will be written down by disciples and will be discussed in Kashi and other places or other centers of learning, and they will write another book. So like that it happened, Okay, so, that's the idea.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
David, you're next. David?
Yeah.
Yes, just getting my... So, Swami, I have a question. Why did not Ramanuja's school, the Shishta Dvaita, produce more intellectual giants? That seems like, in a way, a system that tries to reconcile Dvaita and Advaita.
Yeah.
It seems like that would produce the most brilliant defenders of it, other than Advaita. Why wouldn't Ramanuja's school attract,
But
brilliant...
Ramanuja school suffered from one serious problem. According to some scholars, it got confined into a well-regulated, regimented set of practices, including some external marks where you have seen these sandal paste, one specific way of wearing, putting sandal paste and all that. So, surprisingly, historically, if you read Indian history, Ramanuja system did not get the attention that it deserved in some ways. And one possible reason was Ramanuja brought in a non-Vedic, a non-Sanskrit source of knowledge, Shabda Pramana, epistemology. That is the ancient writings of Tamil Alvas called Nalayira Prabandha, means 4,000 statements. So, interestingly, in Indian scholarly tradition, if you project some writings in some vernaculars, however wonderful they may be, it will get lesser attention than Sanskrit. So, this is a very, when you, it's all you, or I can give an example. For example, how much opposition there was in Europe when they started translating Bible into a non-Latin European language, Czechoslovakian or Hungarian, or just imagine. And some of them were burnt at stake. There was competition between some clergymen. It is our privilege to burn him. So I think, I actually remember the France and Prussia, the one theologian in Prussia and the one in France. One group wanted the privilege of burning the person who translated part of Bible from Latin into Czechoslovakian language. You remember his name? Yeah, you remember that. So you can imagine. So,
I was not aware.
In
I
fact,
was not aware of that.
yeah. In fact, they wanted, I think Calvin wanted the privilege and then he didn't get the privilege. Anyways, something so funny. So, but in India, that sort of thing did not happen. But still, among these scholarly circles, there was this higher respect for Sanskrit. So I'm just giving a parallel example. It's not exactly parallel. In India, suppose you write something in a vernacular, you depend upon some vernacular writings as a verbal testimony for writing a philosophical classic. You also written something else in Latin, but also you quote something from Czechoslovakian or some other European language, you will have a lesser, you will be demoted. I can give you an example, and there is no better and funnier example than this I can give. In Kerala, there was a king, Jamur, in the northern part of Kerala, and he had 19 poets in his court. One of them wrote, he was a great poet in Sanskrit, but he also happened to write something in a vernacular other than Sanskrit. For that, he was demoted the position of half poet. He called Ardhakavi. So the group is to be called 19 poets. So in the vernacular, which you won't understand if I say, it's an Indian, South Indian vernacular, Malayalam. So it could 18 and a half poets. So the group came to be called 18 and half poets, because the 19th one, who was one full-fledged poet, but he also wrote something in the vernacular Malayalam, so he was demoted to the position of half poet. So 18 and half poets. That is how the assembly came to be known. So you can imagine the fanatical, almost ridiculous, laughable fanaticism of Sanskrit, So I can give you so they say, according to scholarly circles, it's been Benares, which center of learning, the most prestigious scholars went to Benares to teach and also to learn. They were not from Benares itself, but they came from all over India. Also came from other places like Burma and other places to learn Buddhism. So in the scholarly circles of Benares, anyone who draws sources from a non-Vedic and non-Sanskrit tradition will be somewhat, well, okay, fine, he will be given a lesser importance. That's one of the reasons why, according to some scholars, the Ramanuja system did not get the importance deserved in some places of India. There's a view, and because you are discussing in a very impartial, objective way, so I wanted to give this example. But this is a fact. In Kerala, it's a fact. The 19th poet happened to write something in the vernacular. He was already writing in Sanskrit. So, instead of 19 poets, they came to be known as 18 and half poets. The assembly of 18 and half poets. So that's...
Swami, an aside, but based on that, did either Girish Ghosh, who wrote in Bengali, or
that is in 19th century. That is the late 19th century, remember. The late 19th century. I'm talking about this happened sometimes maybe in the 14th or 13th century, what I mentioned just now. A local king. A local king, yeah. Local king, anything other than Sanskrit, it should be, by its very nature, it should be secondary. So almost similar to a typical clergyman, how he would have, you can imagine. Do you think Augustine would be impressed if somebody writes something in some pagan language, European language, in the old Czechoslovakian language? No, he won't be impressed. You should write in Latin. Okay? That's true. Same thing, That's it. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Swami.
Thank you.
I have a few observations. I want to get your thoughts on it. My main question is, Advaita is a Jnana Marga experience.
Yeah.
Now in the Bhakti Marga, you can put both Vishishtha Dvaita and Dvaita.
Yeah.
Okay. So my question is, in the Bhakti Marga, where does Dvaita and Vishishtha Dvaita stand from the importance and the value? That's where that's the question. But my comment related to that is, the reason why I can now understand, thanks to you, that why the Ramanujacharya and Madhvacharya revolted against the Dvaitic philosophy is because it can get very abstract.
Yeah.
For us, even for me, when I was listening to Mandukya Upanishad, you can really get confused. You say, you don't need to do anything. Brahma Satya Jagat Mithya. And Mandukya Upanishad in particular confused me to that extent. So, two questions. One on the Bhakti Marga. Second, at that time, Advaitins, did they give more approaches for the experience, Marga, for the experience? Those are the two questions. The role of Bhakti Dvaita
Yeah.
and with Dvaita for bhakti,
Yeah.
and what did the Advaitins do for enriching ourselves to have that experience of the Brahman.
Yeah, I think one reason is uh, it was a highly regimented intellectual culture. You can imagine these scholars, they started learning when they were 5 or still younger and continued learning till their death. Continued learning, teaching, writing till death. Nothing else to do. So they often identified themselves with Sanskrit and also with the metaphysical and philosophical aspect of it, and not devotional aspect of it. That is surprisingly you find the language of Chitsukacharya, Chitsuki wrote Tattwapatipika, the language of Sikha wrote Khandakadya. They're all very, very dialectical. But then when every day they used to go to the temple, they used to do puja, they used to chant, and then they write these dialectical books. The one exception was Madhusudana Saraswati in 16th century. And the credit for reconciling and bringing back to Advaita fold the old original devotional fervor of Shankaracharya, that credit goes to Madhusudana Saraswati, who was as much a great devotee as he was a philosopher. So he wrote Godhartha Deepika, it's a well-known book on Bhagavad Gita. Lot of philosophy, but lot of devotion also you find. So your question, that the point is, they paid only attention to the metaphysics. That's the only thing in the scholarly discussions. The devotional points of Shankaracharya found rarely any place or any mention in the writings of post-Shankarite dialecticians. What is your question? Can you repeat once more? Please repeat. Not audible.
In Advaita, it is an experiential path, Jnana Marga.
Yeah.
In that, so if it was done intellectualized, it can really confuse
That's true.
everybody.
No, that's what really happened. So that caused, for example, Madhvacharya was learning Ishtasiddhi, Vimuktatmans, well-known book. So he got totally frustrated. But then he was learning a well-known dialectical work by a post-Shankarite Advaitins, and that created a revolting impression. He did not stay long enough to study the entire Advaita philosophy, or the exposition was one-sided, totally philosophical, metaphysical. This could happen. This could really happen. But if you read Shankaracharya's original Gita Bhashya, you won't be confused. Absolutely no room for confusion. Confusion happened mostly due to the writings of post-Shankarite Advaitis. But remember, in spite of all that, the majority of people who follow Vedic tradition in India, they are all followers of Shankaracharya. Not that everyone studies Shankara's works, but then he stands till now as the most popular, the greatest philosopher saint of Indian tradition. There is absolutely no doubt about it. Without Shankara, many temples would not have existed. Without him, many of the devotional poetry would not have been written. Without even the method of worship that we follow, he was the one. He wrote a poem describing different Sadhu Sashti Pujara Puja Stotram, different modes of worship he wrote. And all that he wrote. So, but these were completely ignored in this dialectical confrontation. This could happen. Yeah.
Mark, you're up next.
Yeah.
Mark, question.
Pranam Maharaj.
Namaskar. Yeah.
I wanted to find out in Madhvacharya's system, who is eligible for salvation or liberation? Is everyone eligible, or is it just certain souls or certain people that are eligible in that system?
Yeah. And there's a little bit of Calvinism in Madhvacharya, you find. For example, he says, there are certain people who are eternally doomed for staying in the hell. Nitya Naraga Siddhanta, the doctrine of eternal damnation. It is very surprising as to how he came to this conclusion. But there are those who deny Vishnu, God, his own interpretation of Godhead, to be more specific, and those who don't follow certain ethical, moral principles. So, but then those who are eligible, according to Madhvacharya, those who follow this doctrine that Vishnu is the ultimate, the final refuge, and follows the devotional path and surrenders himself to him, he is eligible for liberation in Madhvacharya. But again, he says there are different categories of spiritual aspirants. Those who are eternally liberated, and those who will get liberation through the spiritual practices, and those who are bound, but still they will, if they turn to God, they will get liberation. There's only a small number of people, they will never get liberation. That's the idea behind. The last mentioned aspect is unique to Madhva system. You don't find anything like that in any other system of Indian philosophy. Nowhere you find.
What does Dvaita say?
Dvaita tells you any person who practices certain moral, ethical values in life, who develops this discerning wisdom as to what is real, what is unreal, and those who cling to the absolute reality, and those who develop this internal mental discipline, sense control, mind control, then contentment, concentration, a sense of sanctity and sacredness, and those who do their duty with a sense of total unselfishness and also with total dedication. Eventually their mind will become pure. When their mind becomes pure, automatically, eventually, they will get this idea, this Advaita Jnanam, that will take them to liberation. Even in Advaita system, it is just that you discover the truth within yourself. When you practice Karma Yoga, when you practice sanctity and sacredness in doing whatever may be your duty, and you practice this mental, the moral disciplines, then you will slowly evolve, your mind will evolve, your thoughts become pure, your emotions become pure. And as our mind becomes more and more pure, then our perception of life, the way we look at life, the way we look at others, will also change. And then we will realize that actually you are not this physical body. Physical body comes and goes. You are something that is transcendental. You also realize the same Atman, the same divine spark that is within you is present in everyone. So this universal spiritual experience is the goal of everyone in Advaita. Whatever tradition or religion you are born into, whatever may be your path, it's an internal pilgrimage. You are starting a pilgrimage when you start spiritual life. That is Advaita. Important thing.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Yeah.
That's all, Maharaj. We
Yeah.
can wrap it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Pranamastu.
Ram.
Namaskar. Namaskar. Namaskar.